So please welcome with me our panelist, the first expert in cryptocurrency and crypto assets that we have today is our friend Christian Hill. So welcome. Thank you. And from New York, the founder and CEO of Simi Gallery, Brendan Burns. Welcome, Brendan. So welcome, Christian, and welcome, Brendan, to Colombia. How are you guys?
Gracias. Great, thank you.
So I would like to start this conversation with one of the most famous Picasso's quote. That is, a painter is a man who paints what he sells. An artist, is, on the other hand, is a man who sells what he paints. Why I want to start this conversation with this quote, it's really simple, and is that it bothers me a lot that people think that art and business shouldn't be in the same conversation. So you live from art. I would like to know, do you think art and business should be in the same conversation?
Absolutely. I will say, first of all, thank you for being here, and thank you for having me and us. Christian, this is wonderful. Andres, I'm sorry, this is wonderful. I think about it a little bit differently, though. I think about it through the filter of entrepreneurship and art. And at the heart of entrepreneurship is really inspiration. So, and I think that those two things are very similar. So for an artist, you are inspired to solve a problem frequently.
Yep.
And your inspiration comes from a place sometimes of deep passion or simply need. Artists and entrepreneurs are often inspired by the same things. And so that need to release something that's inside of you and create through a process something tangible that other people can find value in, I mean, to me is a holy and very, very pure process. And I'll trade you a quote back. I can't swear that he said this, but he's widely attributed with this. Is Michelangelo, when asked, how he created one particular beautiful sculpture, is he said, "I saw the angel in the marble, and I carved until I set him free." I love that.
Artists and scientists are the front line, or innovation are the front line of any kind of creation. So in order to create new business models, in order to create new paths through entrepreneurship, you need inspiration. And trying to create those bridges between at least the art world and the entrepreneurial world is required in order to create a dialogue between different kind of knowledge that eventually could be applied into a business model, into a new product, into a new experience. So most of the time, the connection between business and design is already established, but the connection between business and art is relatively new. So only big and large organizations are starting to create this path that should be could be spread around different sizes of businesses.
Thank you very much. And I think that we have that idea here nowadays that the artist should be broke. And why is that? Why we don't have like really rich people, or maybe not rich, but people that don't have financial problems living from art? I think that it's not bad. So I think that we agree that we can have in the same conversation business and art. So we have to do something else, and it's bring to the conversation technology, because business and art nowadays are completely related with technology. And on the news and newspaper and social media, we are seeing a lot of information like cryptocurrency, crypto assets, NFTs, blockchain, decentralization. So I would like you to explain us, and to everybody that is connected with us by streaming, and the people here, what are all these concepts? Because, for example, decentralization, blockchain, but explain to us like if we were golden retrievers, please.
I'm not sure if I know the language of the golden retriever, but I'm going to try it. Definitely, there's a lot of buzzwords and a new jargon that is emerging, but we need to use blockchain as a new technology that is available. It was the cloud service 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and it was the steam machine 200 years ago. Blockchain is just a new technology. It's only that. You can apply blockchain to different kind of things. You can apply blockchain to the health world. You can apply blockchain to the business world. You can apply blockchain to finance, or even you can apply blockchain to the art world. Between all this variety of technologies that are blockchain, because there are so many blockchains. There is not only one blockchain, no, there are a lot. And currently, anyone with a good technical skill is able to replicate a blockchain. But what is the difference here? That in the last decade, there's an explosion of one blockchain that is leading the conversation, that is Bitcoin, and around there, other blockchain that is Ethereum. Under this kind of blockchains, there are people that start to give them a value or new uses to this technology. So we have this big technology that is blockchain. We have some example of those networks that are, for instance, Bitcoin or Ethereum, and we have inside those blockchains a particular use that could be the crypto assets. The crypto assets are some particular tokens. Those are fungible tokens, tokens that all of them are the same. There's no distinction between Bitcoin and another coin. So between that particular blockchain, we have some particular assets that are crypto assets. And at least I'm very cautious because in Colombia, we are very afraid about regulation, and it's happening around the world. It's very difficult to, if we are talking to a lawyer or to an investor or to a regulator, it's very difficult to talk about cryptocurrency or crypto assets. So I prefer that we talk about crypto assets. And one particular branch of those assets are particularly the non-fungible tokens, which is the front line and the most common application that we are currently seeing around the world. So we start seeing how the art world is in a big conversation with the technological world through this particular protocol that are called the non-fungible tokens. So what are the difference between those? That each one of those assets are unique, are different. So there is only one particular NFT in the world. And why this is relevant? Because it is creating a link between the maker, between the creator, between the artist and his work, something that couldn't be done before. So 20 years ago, through the history, if you were an artist and you make a piece and you had the chance to sell it, so it was your work, it was your art, but nowadays it has a different owner. But with this new technology, it's possible to start tracking and avoid to lose the connection between the artist and their work. And this is why it's so relevant for the artwork, for the art world.
Can I interject
Definitely.
For a second, Christian? I started going down the rabbit hole, which we've talked about,
Yeah.
and it's easy to fall in on blockchain probably 5 years ago, and I struggled with where to start. And so if I can, I want to offer a very simple definition of what a blockchain is. Okay, blockchain is simply a database, but what makes it unique is that the database itself is decentralized, meaning that it exists across perhaps tens of thousands of computers or servers around the world. And what makes it also unique is that any data element that exists on the server has been validated through a process that is what people would call immutable because of very advanced cryptographics. It's really that combination of elements that created the precedent kind of framework for cryptocurrency, which is the first application of blockchains, hence Bitcoin. And what the people, a lot of the people who really formulated the creation of Bitcoin initially, and then subsequent innovations like Ethereum, if you go and read the white papers, which I would recommend anybody who's really interested in learning about this doing, you'll see that just like all art and innovation and entrepreneurship, one thing builds on the next. Okay, we are all about. There are very few new ideas. We are all just standing on the shoulders of our ancestors, you know. And with crypto is no different. So Ethereum was introduced in part as a programmable blockchain or cryptocurrency, which means that you can create lots of different applications and on top of the initial framework of the cryptocurrency. And then now we've seen additional chains, as you mentioned, that have been introduced in concert with that. So that gets us to the difference between a fungible token and a non-fungible token. And it's a simple way to think about it is if I take out, you know, a $5 bill or a 10,000 peso note and I give it to you, you're going to trust that that's basically the same thing. That's fungible token basically. Okay. If I take a picture of this and I give it to Andres or Christian, it's a non-fungible token. It's unique because I've stipulated that it's unique. What's also unique about it is that usually these non-fungible tokens are tethered to a smart contract. Okay, and smart contracts are a core innovation that I think are related to art. For anybody who's really interested and wants to build a base of understanding, there's a phenomenal podcast from 2017. It's a Tim Ferriss podcast. I think it's number 244, and it's called The Quiet Master of Cryptocurrency. Have you listened to it? Yeah. I've listened to it like 5 times. It's awesome. But it's Naval Ravikant, Tim Ferriss, and Nick Szabo. And Nick Szabo is credited with coining the term smart contract. And essentially, it's a programmable agreement, which is that if we make a contract around something, we can define if-then statements that dictate what happens next, right? As long as I fulfill my part, then something happens. So that's a really cool innovation because what it means with an NFT, and then I'll stop talking in a second, is that we can program into the smart contract that if I sell my art, whether it's physical art and it has an NFT, or it's digital art and it's related to an NFT, to Christian, then I can get a 10% royalty if he resells it to Andres. That's a real innovation. And because we don't have to trust each other to do that, it's defined and it's public and it's immutable, which means it can't be changed.
So how many times an artist can sell its NFT?
In theory, infinitely, but you could define it as this can't be resold more than 100 times or 5 times. Or after the 5th time it's sold, something different happens.
There's something also important, and is the financial world. Banks. We don't need banks anymore for the transactions. Or you think that perhaps we are going back to the banks, like for example, Visa. Visa said like 1 month ago, now you can buy NFTs with our credit card. That's going back to centralization. So what do you think is going to happen with that?
Let me jump on that. There is a race currently in this new world. So you can see, even in Bogota, in Colombia, there are a community of enthusiasts that are working with Ethereum, that is the public blockchain. People that are working by themselves in a garage or literally in their living room. But also there are big corporations that want to start using the technology and getting profit from them, maintaining the advantage that they have in the previous models. So blockchain is a promise of decentralization. That's true. But also there are some players that are extremely big and without a proper management or governance, this is how we call a proper governance of the network, they could be replicating this kind of model in which big players are taking advantage. That is happening in different markets. So I celebrate the idea that big corporations are also big organizations, not only for profit, but because there are big and large non-profit organizations that are willing to build the future of internet that are public goods, digital public goods. And the blockchain, we will require, we need to start thinking internet and blockchain as also as a public good. And they're gonna be a relatively small concentration, I think, if it's not properly managed. So I celebrate that besides going into, we were talking yesterday that Snoop Dogg is also turning his traditional music label into an NFT label. And it's going to change every industries. So the same thing that happened 20 years ago, with only a few companies used to own a web page, only a few people used to own email. In the future, everyone is going to have at least one digital wallet to start trading those different.
How you create a digital wallet? For example, if we want to tell people how to start, like the first step of entering into this world of decentralization, how you create a wallet, how people can get into this movement.
There are so many options. There are wallets that are more user-friendly than others, but there is one of the most popular around the world that is called MetaMask. That is one particular wallet led by an organization that started with creating wallet for people, for individuals, but they are also start moving to create wallets for companies. It's very difficult and very different to manage a personal wallet rather than to manage a wallet that's going to be for an organization. So I recommend to you, if you want to use or Google MetaMask, it's relatively easy to just download, open a new wallet. Obviously, there are some a different kind of C words that they call it. There's going to be a different kind of password. There's also an app that is very popular, has a growing community in Colombia that is called Status. And I like that particular one because they are merging in one app, they are merging the service of the wallet, the service of encrypted conversations, and also they are promoting this Web3 browser. Because currently the new blockchain require, the new internet require a different kind of browsers. Nowadays we are used to that every time we go into a web page, they ask us for our email to track us, to give us customized content. But in Web3, you require your login, and your experience is not going to be defined only by your email, but it's going to be defined by your wallet. So there are plenty of options.
Okay.
Would it be helpful to talk about Web 3 for a second? I mean,
we're jumping.
Maybe as a construct. I'm older than these guys, so for me, I have to put context around anything to understand it. But my first company, in a full disclosure, my first company I helped start was in the mid-90s. And so it was very much a Web 1 company. And there's a very easy way to think about this, I think, which I can't take credit for. It comes from Chris Dixon, who's one of the lead partners of a very famous venture capital firm called Andreessen Horowitz. And by the way, There's a lot of free and wonderful information on their website. It's a16z.com. Anyhow, so Chris created this construct, which he said Web 1, roughly the period from the early mid-90s to 2005-ish, was really about read and write. Okay, it was just repurposing information to publish and consume. Web 2, which we really have all participated in, everybody in this room, is roughly from the period, I would say, from about 2005 to 2020. And Web 2 was really characterized by user-generated content, social, mobile, and targeting. Web 3 has been, I think, is bursting from the foundations of these two precedent movements because of problems related to what's happened. And that's where innovation comes from, right? The need to solve problems. And so a great way, I think, to think about Web 3 is that Web 3 isn't just about cryptocurrency. Web 3 is about decentralization and ownership. And I think about it as creator-driven ownership. It's crediting people and also helping people protect the information in a way that that serves them. Now, there's responsibility that comes with that, but also a lot of opportunity. And so within this context, I think there's, and you started with regulation, there's a really important role for regulation. But if we get it all right, and it's going to take, we're in a early stages in transition time, then, and to bring it back to art for a minute, or just not just visual artists, but all creators, we're going to benefit individually and collectively from the value that we publish, that we put on the platform. And that's why the technology is so important, because it enables different and new distribution channels and helps people benefit from their creativity and innovation.
Okay, thank you. At this moment, I have a question. Like, when you explain all these concepts and all this theory, for me sounds really logical for legal world and also for finance. Why we're reaching a point of art, NFTs, and Bored Apes, and all these crazy things that are happening? Like, why art and not other things, like, for example, real estate? Why we're here with this boom?
Yeah, no, it is though, right? So the almost definitely all assets will be registered on the blockchain. It's a superior technology. So it's a better technical solution to a lot of things that we waste money and time on today. And so, you know, a title or a deed to any piece of property, a contract, you know, a title to a car, to a painting, you know, to anything should be registered on the blockchain. It's cheap and will get cheaper, and it serves everybody involved.
I just want to say that this rush, or the connection between the artists and the NFT world, I think is connected due to this is my personal opinion, is the artists are more willing to take risk, to try new things, and they are contributing to domesticate, to tame this new technology. So I definitely believe that the artists is very different for real estate company trying to try new things. For any organization, it's very difficult to try and experiment new things. However, the experimentation is part of any artist. So they have a new tool and they start using it and trying to get the best or get the most of it.
Yeah, and for example, in the case of a traditional gallery, how was that moment in which you said we should start getting to this technology and launching some NFTs?
It's a great question. I struggle with it a little bit because I don't think there's anything that's innovative about NFTs as it relates strictly to art. So from NFTs as a medium to express art. There's nothing literally nothing that you couldn't do with a digital representation of art that you need an NFT for. Okay, so to me, all of the innovation with NFTs is related to the relationship between the NFT and the smart contract, and how that works, and that's a broad canvas to create on. And the reason why is, to me, 4 or 5 different things. One is that an NFT creates automatic provenance when executed correctly. 2 is you've established, and we talked about this a moment ago, the opportunity for an artist to enjoy a persistent royalty and otherwise define things that represent her or his interests over time. A third thing is from the collector's perspective, is that you have automatic access to a secondary market. Okay, so when most of the art in the world that's sold doesn't cost $1 million, it costs less than $5,000. And yet, if you buy something at a relatively lower price, you almost never have the opportunity to try to resell it even easily, except in a flea market, But NFTs enable that. And then the fourth thing, I think, for me, is that there creates a tether between the artist and the collector in a way that gives the artist the ability to maintain a conversation or a relationship. So you can have more control as the creator over who's going to own your work, how you want to communicate with them subsequently. You can put things in the terms in the smart contract that are something like, well, if you buy my work of art, I promise to show up to your next dinner party. People do that in book clubs. Famous authors do that in book clubs. Why won't artists do that? I mean, I know they will, but we haven't thought about that way yet. But there's real utility and value in that. So from the gallery's perspective, and then I'll stop for a second, I actually think that, over the last couple of years, the thing that has gotten tremendous hype are really PFP projects, profile picture projects, okay? Bored Ape Yacht Club, Mutant Apes, Other Apes, CryptoPunks, Z-Kitties, other things, V-Friends, and those are all really super cool. But what those have been are really coordinated projects of people. Those are really marketing mechanisms, and in a way, they're collective efforts. And so if you think about independent artists and how or even galleries and how they participate, I think they have to think about how can we cooperate with other people in order to have a coordinated effort where we've agreed on the general aesthetics, the values of what we're trying to do, how we want to promote it, who we want to promote it to, and so on, and that there's a concerted effort in terms of how they're going to try to use the technology and promote it moving forward. I mean, that's kind of one of the things that we're trying to do.
And I think there are 2 types of NFT collectors, the one that really appreciate the art, and the other one that is finding a membership for a group or a community.
Or pure speculators too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen a lot of that.
So in your case, you are not interested in the speculator, of course. You are more in the traditional artist reaching to the NFT point.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'm a capitalist. I'm totally unapologetically. What we're trying to do at CME is create a framework that really protects artists' rights and helps them make money for the purpose of making more great art. And so what we believe, like a religion, we believe that by aligning the interests of all parties in a way that's defensible and has integrity, that everybody will benefit, and that artists, thousands and thousands of ambitious, talented people around the world will make more money and be able to spend their time doing what they want to do,
I just want to say something related, because there are some examples of some communities that are willing to use the new technology including art, but also a good cause, a good purpose, and trying to create a community around it. So there is a big player, or at least a platform that is called Superworld. They have launched at least 5 campaigns in which they are trying to involve community to bring to get a piece of art, but with those resources, the app receive a percentage that is very open. The artists receive a percentage, and it's completely transparent and open to everyone. And a part of the money that is collected is going directed to IT, to protect Amazonas, to bring some indigenous knowledge to the surface. So there are things that we are already doing these things. What this technology is enabling is this transparency, this traceability in each one of the steps, and a recognition that with a smart contract, you cannot start fixing or negotiating new terms for a different artist or for a different piece of art. If we agree, we set the smart contract. At the end, the smart contract is just a set of code lines that say, if something happened, we are going to split the money in this way. Something that we used to have to involve a lawyer and an accountant. Nowadays is automatically done thanks to the smart contract embedded into the blockchain.
Okay, perfect. And I have another question, and is, for example, if an artist is willing to start his project or her project, what happens if he uses NFTs as a way of crowdfunding for his or her project? Galleries could be like in danger because of this?
That's a whole nother can of worms, which I'm happy to open. But galleries, the gallery model has been largely broken for many, many decades. That most art galleries are fundamentally insolvent. The mortality rate is extremely high. Even successful galleries typically generate, on average, like 80+% of their revenue from 5 or 6 artists. And most of their sales come from a very small number of repeat collectors, like 40 or 50 on average. And those are at turnover levels of, from $500,000 to $10 million, okay? So, and all these numbers are public numbers, so you can go check my math. But the reason why I don't think like that's the real issue is because if you look at the numbers, at the quantitative objective metrics, galleries are disincentivized to take a risk on new artists. They have concentration risk, but they're too afraid to change for logical, objective reasons, really. So the model doesn't serve most artists, and I think most artists, many artists, define a goal as going and getting gallery representation, and I think that's the wrong effort. I think that they would be better served to think about how they can create a persistent relationship with people that love them and their work, and at the same time gain more confidence in finding that voice and that authenticity, because that's what leads to a better audience and people who are going to want to buy and hold your work and are going to help the price of that work increase over time and not rely on a gallery. Now that said, I have nothing against galleries. I think that there will be a number of galleries that innovate with the times and figure out how to operate in this world in a way that's like to the next business model, to the next level of innovation, because they really do serve a very important role. I just think their business model is broken.
Perfect. And for example, if you are not an artist and you're a business student, for example, we're in a business school, in a practical way, how can I take advantage of this knowledge that we're talking right now? I don't know, for a new business, a new project, how can you do it?
There's a new ocean that the technology is opening. And I think the art market is definitely more willing to take risk than others. So definitely it's a good step or a good first baby step to trying to testing new business models because we really don't know. Obviously, an artist can just uh, put his own work and a platform and sell it by themselves. However, an artist, what should be doing? Should be doing that thing, or should be focusing on her or his work, his art. And in the middle, there are a lot of organizations, nonprofit, the private sector that is they want to start seeing how they can take advantage, how they can learn. Today was launched a new campaign here in Colombia in which was an alliance between the large food company that's called Ramo, launched a new product on Rappi Turbo in which you buy a new piece of cake, and with this particular cake, you are receiving your first bitcoins. So things are happening here. So those are experiments in which the real world is start connected with not only the digital world, but also the crypto asset world. So the message I think for the students is you are in an age when you can take risk, when the older ones are they want to understand, it's very complicated. So the only way to start a new path is just walking on that one. So experimenting is the option. This is why I'm suggesting. Expecting that in a context as Colombia, we're gonna launch or develop the new blockchain, I'm not sure it's gonna be that way. Our opportunity is trying to use the technology that is available and mix it with our culture and with our technology and find new way of apply or develop the technology with our context. But Colombia is not going to be um, a big player in the scene in the coming years.
So, for
However,
example,
we could start exploring.
if I have a fashion brand,
Definitely, you can apply an NFT or the technology to anything. This was my first NFT. I bought it with a friend that is an artist, and she's promoting, and she was experimenting with technology. Literally, she made some pieces that are counted, are limited, and each one of those pins are connected with a proper NFT. So trying to create the path between the artists that are willing to take the risk and the business that they really want to understand, they really want to take advantage, but they don't know how. And most of us, we really don't know how. So we need to take the hands with the artists and make that path together.
perfect. And there's also a concept, not a concept, a social media that we haven't talked about that is really important for NFTs, and is Discord. I was telling you two last night that I saw a video of two centennials and they were meeting for the first time. And instead of asking for your Instagram or your WhatsApp, is give me your Discord. What is this thing? Like, we thought that Discord was just for gamers, like for playing online, but now people is using Discord as a social media for centennials and also for NFTs. What is Discord about?
I will say, like, I think it's a substitute for the term community, right? It's a social media platform that is more community oriented in nature to some of the things that have happened before it. And one of the real hallmarks of the blockchain movement has been the importance of community at the center of almost every effort and every project. And if you look at whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana or Tezos or a number of other really prominent chains, each of those chains are essentially different attempts at building infrastructure. And in order to support the development of the infrastructure, they have to attract people who are going to develop within that framework. And so that's why they all have all these community elements, because those community elements allow people to self-identify with that framework and to provide their own effort to help evolve that framework, right? And so Discord is separate from that, because people who are working in each of these different blockchains, there's all of them have, Discord account. I mean, I have a Discord account. I will tell you, I don't use it very often, but I do have one. And it's really, really interesting how younger generations of people, go to whatever is the most effective thing next,
And how it works? Like you download
Mm,
Discord and how it works?
It's very similar. I'm more familiar with software that are using organizations for productivity. So for instance, there is a huge, relatively big one that is called Slack, in which you have different kind of channels. And in each one of the channels, there are some kind of content and question and discussion is different. So visually, at least, and the UX, what I saw in Discord is an open Slack to the world, in which you can find your niche, which community is talking about whatever you want. Game of Thrones.
Slack is
or
also
NFT.
primarily a paid model, right? And it's
Yeah,
mostly a business oriented framework, and Discord
Yes.
is free and it's much more community oriented, right?
Yeah, that's a big difference, definitely. But rather than to have a Facebook conversation, an Instagram conversation, in these kind of platforms, you can just upload documents, you can track what people have been saying since the beginning of the channel.
And I have another question that a lot of people ask me about this. If I'm going to start a business and I want the business to include NFTs, should I have Instagram, for example? Because when I see NFT projects, most of the time they don't have an Instagram. They just have Twitter and Discord. So for business people and entrepreneurs that are watching us right now, should they have an Instagram for an NFT project?
I think that it's important to recognize again that we're in the very early stages of this, and it's going to evolve, and so I think you have to have a Twitter presence and probably a Discord presence and an Instagram presence, particularly if you're a visual artist. So I don't think that those things are mutually exclusive at all. I think anyone who's listening to this conversation and thinking about where do I fit in should define their own path and what they're trying to do, but think about this is an opportunity. What's happening right now is an opportunity to find your audience, to find your own community, and here we are in 2022, and there's a lot of market turmoil around prices and all that kind of stuff. I don't think you should completely ignore that, but I think you should mostly ignore that, because when we look back, I promise you will see that the underlying human consumer-oriented consumption or behavior or activity is going to resemble a curve that's going like this. And we've seen the same thing happen, with other consumer-oriented technology adoption periods. When we had the first dot-com market crash in 2000, asset values got hammered, and yet when you look back, you saw a steady line of additional activity that happened. And the people who defined the next era kept their heads down and kept building and kept operating and stayed focused on what the long-term objectives are. And today, one of the differences today is it's not just driven by businesses, but people can define it within their own, what works for them, using Discord or Instagram or whatever. The hard thing about Instagram, like Instagram's available to any artist. Okay, there's no barrier for me to be on Instagram, but there's a huge barrier for me to get recognized, And so you have to figure out how you're going to get recognized, over time. and you have to be really persistent about that. So I don't think it really matters whether you find your people on Instagram or Discord or both, you know. You just have to like really focus on finding your tribe and you know, and doing that.
And depends also the context of the market. I think it's
Yeah,
completely different
right.
for an artist to try to sell something in New York rather than trying to start a new business or in Bogota. Our context is relative is very different. Um, I know that people in Colombia are using Discord, but it's a very small niche.
But there, you know,
Depends of the purpose. You're trying to create the community,
yeah.
or you are looking for trying to define your customer. There are
With
things-
respect, though, Christian, I would say, though, that one of the things that we're seeing that's happening much more than ever before is people all over the world are finding their tribe in lots of different places, you know. And one of the things that we say at CME is talent is evenly distributed and opportunity is not, you know. And yet what the innovation around these different the technology platforms allow for is you to find opportunity where the opportunity exists, and maybe to be less constrained by the geographic boundaries and even the intellectual or emotional or behavioral boundaries that have been defined for us, because in many cases those boundaries are are um, are less important today, you know, or less a barrier.
Yeah, and each one of the communities have their own channels, their own languages. I was thinking, I saw recently a chart that was comparing each one of the big social media tools, how they have changed during the years. And all of them reach a peak, and eventually they start losing users. So it happened with Facebook. Instagram is decelerated. TikTok is relatively growing, but not growing as anymore. But the unique network that keep on growing steady is not an exponential growth, but keep on growing steady is Reddit. Reddit is extremely focus oriented. Reddit has all the channels in which you can find people that are very interested and know what they are talking about, but you have millions of channels.
And do you think that the community or the people on Instagram is the same people on Discord? Like,
I
is
don't
the
think
same?
so.
It's different kind of people. So if you want to reach another market, it could be a good idea to enter Discord and understand Discord. I mean, I'm in Discord and also I'm buying things through Instagram, or is a different community? Because some people think that Discord is so gamer, like it's an NFT and blockchain world. Do you think that people that are all day on Discord are also on Instagram?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if they are using it in the same way, because the tool are different, are very different. Instagram is just to post picture and some very brief interaction. Discord is literally if you wanna work or if you wanna run a small office, you can make it on Discord. There are so many things that you can do there. So there are tools that are not comparable.
We're at a leading business school, so I guess it's okay for me to sound like an academic for a minute. And in full disclosure, I'm a professor in a big part of my life at Columbia University in New York. And when people always ask me, you know, well, where do I go? What do I do? I'm like, who's the audience? You know, do some customer discovery. You have to define who you're trying to reach, and then understand where they are, and deliver the message almost on their terms, you know, or at least meet together.
Okay, perfect. And you said before that CME Gallery believes that opportunity is not well distributed. How you are trying to distribute opportunity?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, what we're trying to do is empower the artist with the tools so the way our platform works is artists come on the platform and they upload images related to their work, and metadata related to those images. And then we integrate outbound marketing tools so that they can, from one location that's connected to their inventory management tool, they can promote across Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, not Discord yet, but we'll get there. So that it's easy for them. And we'll do it for them if they want. And then we give them actionable ways to improve how that works. And we do the same thing with outbound sales opportunities. And so we're not trying to create a wall. This is a very Web3 kind of concept. We're not trying to create a walled garden like the way most, Web2 platforms work, but really trying to create an open framework. Now, we want to get compensated on every transaction, but at a low enough level that we're always driving a lot more value to the artist than she or he feels, we're taking, And so that's how we're doing it. It is helping them reach that audience, and then adding intelligence around how they can improve those efforts.
How that intelligence work? How that intelligence work, like technology. For example, if from the point of view of the customer, what is the advantages that I can have from these new strategies?
Well, you mean from the collector's perspective? Yeah. So from the collector's perspective, it's an ecosystem. So we use machine learning to help people who are interested in artists find the right artists. And so we're trying to improve the experience based on their behavior and the choices that they have defined for themselves. So we're not, one of the things that I like to say is, like, we're sort of cynical about curation. And I don't mean that against curators per se. I just mean that I think, or we think as a company, that any ambitious artist has an audience, and we want to help them, that person find their audience, rather than us, or one or two people in our company making the choice about what goes where or who should see what, So in other words, we want to trust the taste of the person, but use technology to help them see choices they're likely to appreciate.
So this is happening right now.
We're close. We're developing.
So soon people can do
Yes.
that. Okay, amazing. I want to talk about something that is really interesting, and is DAOs. We were talking last now about DAOs. It's like a really not complex concept, but I don't know if you are able to explain it.
Let's define it.
Let's define it. Like golden retrievers.
DAOs means decentralized autonomous organizations, and are maybe a set of smart contracts that are connected between them in order to, with a main objective. This is how, like a company that you define on code, literally. So the idea is that eventually different kind of users or organizations that are connected in the network, that are connected in the wallet, once they complete a task, they receive a reward, or they interact with the particular DAO.
Give an example. I have one
if you want.
I mean, like, let's say the three of us saw a beautiful house and we wanted to buy it, okay? But we didn't have enough money to buy it. And it was a beach house. It had 5 bedrooms, and there were a bunch of other beautiful things about it. We could form a DAO. We could define all the membership, requirements of the DAO, like who's going to take out the trash and who's got to clean the house, and then we could invite anybody in our network on Discord or Instagram to participate in our DAO. And so the DAO would be defined in the smart contract, and it's like a collective in a way, okay? And we could raise, a bunch of money to buy the house, and then all the behaviors and what we agreed to do would be predefined. So relatively recently, one of the most famous examples was that Sotheby's auctioned off a copy of the United States Constitution. This happened 6 months ago, approximately. And I think that the reserve price was like $30 million. So in the course of 72 hours, literally, some entrepreneur in Chicago came up with the idea of forming a DAO to buy the US Constitution. Now, there were a bunch of problems with the approach, okay? But it was a really cool example. And within 72 hours, they raised something like $42 million to buy the to bid on the US Constitution at a Sotheby's public auction. And by the way, the average contribution was like 250 bucks. Okay? Amazing, amazing, right? To be the owner of the US Constitution. Now, of course, what happens if we get it, right? And there are all these other things. So now, because that whole effort was public and it was going to be purchased in an auction, somebody outbid them by $1.
No.
And he's a very famous financier from Chicago, and he did it in part just despite them, which is a longer story. But anyhow, it gives you an idea about the power of these things, because you can really create, you could do something wonderful by leveraging the power of the network.
And they would be like all of them will be the owners of this document. They can rent the document actually and have royalties of doing that. All the community of the DAO. There's not like one owner.
Excuse me. The DAO could define that constitution is going to travel around to every elementary school, one day at a time or something like that.
I was wondering, for example, I have so many questions. The first one would be regarding these DAOs. So let's say that the DAO would have been able to acquire the US Constitution. Okay, how does that work? I mean, are we looking at like a Green Bay Packers scenario where everybody's just like joint owner of the product and everybody must define what must be done with the product as a shared owner, or is this like a corporation where somebody has more percentage of the ownership? How does that?
It's closer to the former than the latter. And there's one prominent example in the art world, which is I think it's called Bright Ideas. Have you guys heard of that? There's a NFT gallery that started in Santa Monica, I think, California, and if not Santa Monica, somewhere close by in Los Angeles. Bright Ideas or Bright Moments, something like that. And they started as a DAO. And it's NFT gallery that's doing good work, and they wanted to expand. So they, in order to take in new members of the DAO, the rules that they created were that anybody who wanted to invest in the DAO could submit a proposal to invest, and then the members of the DAO would vote. And if there was 51% or whatever, then they would take that investment. And in fact, there's a blog post that was written by a famous venture capitalist in New York named Fred Wilson. Fred is the founding partner of Union Square Ventures, and he tells the story of their investment. They submitted a proposal on a Friday, DAO voted on Sunday, they became a shareholder in the DAO on Monday.
Any DAO can define their own rules. You can define whatever rule do you want. The thing is that the touch point with the legal world is not well defined nowadays. So there are some legal entities that could help to make that transition. For instance, on the blockchain, on the DAO, all of us, we are the owners. But in a parallel, we need to define maybe a cooperative or association, or maybe just a regular company that eventually will own or do the things that we are looking for on the material world. So that particular touch point with the legal is our, I love to use the example of the water, but it's open sea again. This is just in each one of the countries, they're finding new ways how this DAO that can be created in minutes and can fundraise millions in minutes. How are you going to control them? How are you going to control them or avoid that they are not willing to take advantage of the market in a bad way? There is one organization that is called MakerDAO that they were leading the discussion, but also at the development of the technologies of the DAO. And at the end they create a company in Switzerland that on paper in the world this is how they are operating. But this is a small part of the operation because this particular DAO is receiving crypto assets. They are for them, the legal and the material world is not necessarily a concern. So eventually, when you're trying to bring those technological concepts to the material world, it's going to be a challenge, and it's currently a challenge for all the regulators.
And people just don't know how it's going to evolve. I mean, I'm happy to say, like, CME is very much a community. You know, we have thousands of artists, and eventually, you know, tens and tens of thousands of collectors that'll be a part of what we're doing. And we haven't spent a lot of time on this yet, but I'm certain that there'll be a DAO component to it. And for part of the reason why I struggle is because I don't know what the line should be between yet. You know, what the DAO should have governance over and not. And but there are some logical, you know, frameworks and lines.
But for example, you are a capitalist. You said that. DAOs sound like more like a socialist way of making business.
Isn't it how you define it though?
That was it. But it's like everybody's owner of the business, owner of the asset.
I think it's how you define it.
I
right?
think that there is a famous letter from Keynes. We were talking about economies that very famous, relevant economies that he wrote in some letters, and he was mentioning that the evolution of capitalism is in the moment where the investment is socialized. You need to make the investment as fast as you can in order that entrepreneurs can taste the risk and prove the business model that are really generating value rather than speculation. So I think DAOs can accelerate what is already happening in the financial world with any kind of variances with the crowdfunding. You can do debt crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, you can make crowdfunding to invest in factoring, whatever you want. What is happening with these DAOs is that they are accelerating the process that is already happening, in which anyone can be an owner.
You could define, for example, you could define the DAO could be the owner of the corporation, and you could create a framework or rules whereby, you know, these roles are filled, and you know there's a mechanism to change or evolve the roles over time, and the compensation for these roles is this, and the compensation for the CEO can never be more than, you know, X number the lowest paid employee, for example, right? Yeah, exactly. You know, I think that's a great example. You know, I mean, those two guys were capitalists, right? They're from Vermont, but they're capitalists. But you know, I think it's a fascinating new construct because it distributes ownership, you know, to people.
And I think the future of internet is opening new ways in which we could manage not only private goods but public goods. Uh, Microsoft, that is a completely capitalist company, they are leading research in order to facilitate governance of public goods. They have a research line in which they are trying to find new ways in which decision making can be optimized, and that can be relevant for any organization, any company. And with the DAOs, you could start merging or changing the way decisions are being taken. There are something called quadratic voting. That's the thing more weird I have seen, because we are used to know that each vote has the same value in democracy. In the companies, the vote changes depending on the participation of the shareholder, but they are trying to evolve how this decision can be made using technology, but also it opened new opportunities to also redesign democracy. So democracy not only at the whole level, but also how decisions are being made inside organizations.
So the future of companies, governments, and basically everything.
Everything is merged.
Okay, perfect. I would like you to guys give us a prediction of what is going to happen with art, entrepreneurship, and technology. I don't know, it's really hard. It's like, but from your perspective, from like the CEO of Simi Gallery,
Here's what I will say is talking about it really from the art industry perspective is I think that the art industry itself will be completely redefined over the next 10 to 20 years. And if you look at growth over the last 10 plus years, the industry has, quote, grown from about 40 billion US to about 65, 70 billion US, okay, globally. But if you look at the number of transactions and the number of, quote, customers or collectors, that growth, it's been almost flat. And so what that suggests is that all that growth has been a function of price increases, asset increases, okay? And so that to me is a sign of an unhealthy industry. And it's ripe for, you know, disruption because of a lack of innovation. And so what I think is going to happen over the next, you know, again, 10 to 20 years, I think that the art industry itself will become more consumer friendly and focused. That there will be many more transactions that occur at lower price points and more money delivered directly to many, many, many more artists around the world, and that the net result of the application of good technology to the industry is to create a healthier ecosystem.
perfect. Thank you very much.
That's a very big question. I'm not an art expert, so I'm going to give my sense how the things are evolving. I think this is a popular sentence that is everywhere, that banks are trying to transform themselves into technology companies. Technological companies are turning themselves into financial companies. So the component of fintech is going to be everywhere. There are going to be some providers, but all organizations will require that particular touch point in where the payment gateway is moving. And connecting this with art, I think at the end, when all those things are going to be automatized, when all the traditional professions that we know today are not going to exist in 20 years. So at the end, the artists will remain as those people that are able to create value, literally from air, literally from their imagination, and create something valuable that eventually someone else will be willing to pay. So in 20 years, we're going to be, I hope, we are going to have more artists, because we're gonna need it because all different kind of professions are gonna be automatized and embedded in a very fintech world, I think. Obviously, we sense the evolution in Colombia in a different rhythm. When you see what is happening in New York, when you see what is happening in London, things are happening extremely fast. What we are experiencing in Colombia is like what happened there maybe 5 years ago. So that's also an opportunity for the Colombian entrepreneurs.
So at the beginning of the panel, I said I was opening this conversation, but I think we can't close this conversation. This is a conversation that will continue. And I hope this was the first step for many people to understand all these concepts and do the homework. MetaMask, Discord, and understanding all the concepts. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I don't know if someone have any question here.
Thank you, Anders.
Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
Do you think that the transition to the metaverse is more of a generational one? Because Gen Z, people Gen Z are basically the first generation that was born straight into technology. When they were 2 years old, parents were giving them an iPad so they could just like be in front of the screen. Do you think that how much will that affect the consumption of old generations entering the metaverse? And am I going to have an easier time being in my 30s versus a kid that's right now maybe 17 years old and is going to enter the metaverse at age 17, and his value of life is going to be bigger in the metaverse than maybe in the real world? I'm having a little bit of a hard time understanding that because I've lived my life in the real world. I haven't created that much level of value in a digital world. So
That's very interesting, but a hard one. I think I don't like the term the metaverse because there are like the last thing that I read was 500 metaverse that are already established. And I'm 35. By the first metaverse that I experienced was a video game that was called The Sims. And it has been online for 20 years.
Yes.
The
I
thing
mean,
is,
there's been a variation of that.
exactly.
Seems
And
like
it's
The Sims,
merged,
Second Life, all that, yes.
is merged with the possibility to earn money that sometimes you are not even using it in the material world. You prefer to keep on using in the digital world. I think that's completely speculative, but it definitely changed the perception of value. How
Definitely.
you value a good meal, how you value a good experience. So at the end, I'm afraid that some people are gonna, the digital world is a way in which you can make experience massive. For instance, what is happening with the digital traveling, in which you can just pay $20 and explore Beijing for 30 minutes. If you don't have enough money, that's an option. But it's also sad because other people is going to be experiencing.
Still probably better
Beijing
than not doing it, though, right?
Sorry?
Still probably better than not doing it.
Definitely. Yeah.
I in the art space, when the lockdowns first all happened, the art world immediately pivoted to these online viewing rooms, which to me were a bad experience. I'm trying to censor myself, but they were technically well executed, and you could enter a digital environment and quote walk around a gallery and look at the art, but it was antiseptic. And one of the things that people love about going to art fairs and openings, like we're doing an opening tomorrow night in Chapinero, and it's great because people can come and see stuff and talk to each other and have a drink and that kind of thing. But none of that was available to us during the lockdown, right? So what we tried, and I'll tell you our experience, was we we partnered with a technology company that had created essentially an online gaming experience meets a video, a Zoom call. Okay. And they had never done an art opening before. And so we were able to kind of customize the environment. There were several like big rooms. And then there were 18 or 20 rooms off the big rooms. And we went to our artists. We had one artist showcased in each room. And everybody who came were able to trick out their avatars with different, design elements and whatever. And it was not a perfect experience because, some of the tech didn't work right. And some people had older browsers and whatever, stuff like that. But it was a fun experience, And I will say that the range of attendees had to be from early 20s till 70s.
Okay. Nice.
That's only going to improve,
Also, something that's going to happen with metaverses is that the big actors are going to stay in the market. It's the same with computers. I think Meta and Mark Zuckerberg is going to win the fight, and it's going to. We have to understand who is going to be the guardian of this door, of this wall, like they said. And I think it's going to be Meta.
Do you think that Zuckerberg then has like a first mover's advantage of just like, maybe he was not the first mover, but he was like the biggest one with the biggest user base that might make the transition from Facebook to the metaverse that Meta creates? Okay, do you think that just because Facebook is Facebook, they'll be able to provide the added value to create a good metaverse experience, given their fame or current reputation of, being a hotbed for, I don't know, like Russian hackers or whatever, all sorts of like questionable ethics from a company corporate perspective?
He have all that scandals, but we still use Instagram and Facebook. So he already created the community. And if you are going to create a metaverse, you have to create a community that is going to be interactive with this. Also, another important thing is that metaverses it's also a new moment, a new age in humanity. We are coming from an age of just watching and consuming the content, and we want to interact with the content. So metaverses let us interact with the content. We can have like buy things like in Second Life, but with a more social perspective. So Zuckerberg I think, is going to win the fight because he has the community, and also we are entering this new age of interacting with the content.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that they are more now in the business of providing the tools to others to create those kind of experiences. I'm not expecting that Meta or Facebook are going to be creating the content that would eventually hook the community. They are providing the tools. They have this alliance with Unity. That is one of those engines to create video games. But how people are using the metaverses currently is insufficient. So I think it was JP Morgan launched the first office in Decentraland. And they buy a piece of the Central Land for, I don't know, like $200,000. But they buy the piece, they make the announcement, and maybe there were like 5,000 people connected. After the announcement, 2 people were there experiencing. So
I'm more skeptical that Meta will be the big winner for a couple different reasons. One is that Facebook's business model overall is under attack and will continue to, I think, be less effective because of another major Web3 trend, which is privacy protection. And like you've seen when Apple changed the iOS targeting algorithm and stopped allowing Facebook, Instagram, Google to do geo-targeting, ad dollars were like 35 or 40% less effective. That's not going to change. That's going to accelerate. Okay. So that to me is an existential threat to Meta's overall business model. So that's part of it. A second thing though is that it's going to be harder for them to compete for the best talent over time. They're still competitive, for the best talent. But if you look at the pay rate, I don't know this exact, but I'll bet you I'm right that they're paying, 20, 30, 40% more money than other companies because their stock is fully priced. And so if equity is a big part of the compensation package, and you're an ambitious, young, smart person, you're gonna roll the dice on what equity has the most upside. All right, and then there was another point about it, but I know, it's hard for big companies to innovate. There's a scale disadvantage to innovate, because it's hard for them to change the incentive systems inside the organization to enable the best innovation. So they are vulnerable to competition.
Disruptors.
100%.
And they usually start out being the disruptor, but they end up being disrupted by other disruptors.
Peter Thiel has a very famous online lecture at Stanford Business School that's called "Competition is for Losers," and anybody who loves these concepts and ideas should watch it. It's an hour long. It's great, and I'm not a big Peter Thiel fan, but I have deep respect for his intellect, and one of the core premises of that is that you want to be so unique, so focused on the granular mission of what you're doing that you create a unique competitive advantage that no one else can compete with, right? And if you look at the genesis of almost all large companies today that started in the last 30, 40 years, including Facebook, they started really small and on what was not a measurable, addressable market at the time. And then, got bigger.
I mean, okay, I have one final question. Then I'm gonna give the mic to whoever wants to. I mean, I know that you guys don't have a crystal ball on whatever, but I think it was Buffett that said, when people start crying, start buying. When people start yelling, start selling. I mean, given the whole way crypto has been behaving this past month, it's taking a drop from 60K until maybe what, right now, 38, 20.
Talking about Bitcoin specifically, though.
Yeah, just like Bitcoin. Okay, so do you think that the elements, the events, for example, the political instability, once things die down, okay, because things die down, it's going to keep on going up, or I don't know. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball again, but how low is it going to go?
What's your pain threshold? I don't know. Okay. But I'm hugely bullish long term.
Okay.
Immensely, unapologetically,
Gotcha.
and absolutely, if you have conviction, then but things they're the U.S. economy had $10 trillion of money basically artificially injected into it. I mean, there's a huge asset bubble. Colombia doesn't have that problem. I think there were some good reasons why that happened, but there's going to be some pain that has to be worked through to fix that kind of thing. Also, there's been so much rampant speculation in not just Bitcoin, but lots and lots of blockchain currencies that these things have to normalize over time. So we may have 10 years of of relatively slow growth, but what typically happens is that in good, vibrant working economies, that the pain happens really fast. That's what's happening right now, I think. You know, and so there's a bunch of bloodletting, and then I think it's just going to take a long time till we get into a period of euphoria again. And I would say that's great because that's the good time for builders.
Yeah, I, I think that the fluctuation will continue, but there are heavy investment from crypto asset big players in media to maintain the rush, to maintain the Bitcoin, the crypto assets in the conversation in everywhere. So they are pushing directly into everyone's mind that this is something that is here and gonna remain. Yesterday, this is just an anecdote, but yesterday Johnny Depp made an interview about his process, and Elon Musk paid advertisement with a QR code when he was mentioned. Use this QR code and reclaim free Bitcoin and free Ether because we are the believers. You just need to use your wallet, scan the QR, and this big hold they have a lot of Bitcoin that they can just maintain the rush, just giving people some dollars to maintain the discussion. It is weird, it's also, but it will continue.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, what was the first crypto asset that you bought or you invested in? And what would you say is like a reasonable percentage of your total assets to invest in crypto?
The first crypto asset that I invest was Ether, and the first NFT that I bought was this, literally. I'm not investing a lot of money in it. The percentage, as you mentioned, depends of the amount of your pool of your assets. But I think I know some people that they are believers since 5 years ago. I know that there is someone there are in Colombia a lot of people that are literally working 24 hours in the crypto world, and they are receiving their salaries, one part in dollars and one part in Ether. So they will keep on running. And personally, I have less than $1,000 in crypto assets, mostly Ether. I do not recommend my dad to invest money in Bitcoin 5 years ago, and I regret it. But depends the amount of risk that you can take. It depends if you are. It depends if you're managing your own money or you're managing a portfolio of someone else.
I should say we, because my wife is in the audience, invested a couple $1,000 initially several years ago. And that was a big mistake because I was convinced I should do it 7 years ago, and I didn't do it. Anyhow, and I bought Ether and Bitcoin. I didn't do it as an investment. I really did it just because I wanted to learn. And we made some money off that. We sold it, and we still have a small position. So what I would recommend people do, if they're long-term investors, that rather than focusing on a percent as an alternative asset class, they take a small amount of money and they buy a few different leading, like top 5 or top 10 by market cap cryptos, and they do it to learn, and that they get a MetaMask account, they get a OpenSea account to explore NFTs, they get a Coinbase account, and even look at a couple alternative exchanges and just learn for a few months, And at that point, they can make a more informed decision about, I'll allocate whatever 5% of my investable assets to it. That would be my advice.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.